Had so much coffee.
So we are now recording. Welcome everyone to the December version, that's a stupid word. The December installment, that's better, of 100 Pictures of Honey, which is the end of our very first year of readings. So it's a very special reading. I'm very grateful to everyone who has agreed to read this year, including our 3 readers this evening, who are all wonderful and accomplished and talented, and you're going to really love their work. So during the reading, I will put the very long and official bios of our readers into the chat that you can read on your own. Please keep your microphone off while people are reading, but feel free to use the chat, the little reactions, jazz hands, however you would like to react to the wonderful work that you will be hearing. And I will remind everybody at the end of the reading, where you can find the series online and on YouTube if you know someone who missed this reading tonight, or you want to go back and look at readings from previous months. So thank you so much for being here. We don't have a reading series without an audience, so we really appreciate all of you are here. So without further ado, we are going to start with our first reader tonight, who is Margo Berdeshevsky. And I am going to try one more time, because you'd think I'd be good at this by now, to get that bio cut and pasted. There we go. Into the chat, so you can read about all of her wonderful accomplishments, but it's not letting me do that. That's very strange. I'm going to keep trying while she reads, because I want her to get started. Oh, I have to admit that I didn't know a lot about Margo's work, which I'm surprised, because she's very accomplished, until we became pressmates at Sundress. And then I started to go into the internet and read a lot of her work. And I've just been really enamored and impressed with her poems of dense, beautiful language, of the long line and the long thought, kind of this continuing kind of thinking process that you see in her work, that she writes of the worldly and the liminal, right, of the body and how we live in it and in the world. Her voice is very accomplished, and I'm very happy to welcome her from Paris this evening to be our first reader tonight. Without further ado, then, it is Margo Berdeshevsky.
Hi. So thank you, Donna. Thank you, Sundress, for making this book, which I'm very happy with. And without further ado, I will start talking about it. The book is called Neil Said the Night, a hybrid book in half notes. And it begins with an epigraph by Zora Neale Hurston. No hour is ever eternity, but it has its right to weep. And since I'm at the beginning, let me begin with an excerpt from the very first sequence in the book, which is titled Half Notes, which also has an epigraph, and this epigraph is by Alice Notley. To be dead grows on one sweetly, not knowing what time it is. Call these notes half notes, grace notes. I can only speak with small, sharp breaths that hurt my lungs, small bursts of paragraphs and lines, half notes for knowing. Call them the voices that are in me, in these ragged months of global ache. Death is one of the many inevitables, closer than my heartbeat. I am the woman who asks, how close is a death? How near is a God? I am the woman who asks, does order or its shattered window shout? Asks, what can the scholar cry? Is there a scientist in our house? For nothing left. Sparrow, eye on a God with no name for us. What did you find? And this is the title poem from the book. And it is called Neil Said the Night. I sell mirrors in the city of the blind. Kabir. Kneel, said the night, her full paunch moon, mute as I am. Ask for words, said the night instead. Instead, a turning autumn path where the shepherd and his dog lead their X-marked flock, where morning's cry is 100 made single bleat, made soon 1,000 dry-leafed whispers, made sunrise to its lover, the breeze. The lambs and sheep are X'd for killing. Hurry their soiled white woolen bodies as one towards sun. Slaughter ahead, but not yet. And my own marked tongue like a taut wound watch ticks trees, ticks bodies, ticks the veiled and the beheaded, ticks presidents, ticks light, ticks stain I cannot say or bend, ticks last year's dead, ticks this year's dead, this morning's mute as a moon, killed. The lambs will be meat before any plea is answered. The reddening forest can hear, urges syllables like breath to a fire, can speak to leaf, lamb, path, moss, stone. It can. Then I can. Land I mouth, hill of the dead, as if a voice. I have heard of ancient bones, unearthed mere roads away from here. Skeleton of sounds, poem, kneel, said the night. Kneel with me now, with the slaughtered sheep, in case there may be any reply. In solidarity with Ukraine and all other lands and humans now X'd for killing. Fingers touching what's not hungry with ghost. When they told me her lung was a jaguar, an adder, when she told me, I've had a good life, I didn't sign up for being burned alive, when we touched warm stones together, when she said, let's walk the dawn into sand, no sunrise, I will tell you only once, I hate this. And we kissed. Heaven was the compassion of an unselfish shore. I have known believers who know they'll meet their ghosts, no longer ghosts, a daddy in his fedora, a mama naked in her slippers and champagne. Those who know the canoe leaves its cove with ash in its prow to be scattered to the waiting sea where ash will join its woven garland. Known those who know only they'll join for coffee at the same table, the same sky and the grass in the sky. I know two, wed and badly parted, dead the same morning on different islands, and the friends gathered each one to sail and to send their ashes starboard from the ship they'd built together once. Its name was Star of Gladness. I'll ask for only sky. Now I lay me, and when I die, it takes so little to make me happy. After a jungle, after a rain, words burned behind me. No pyre, air, a tight dress, my hands wide open, yours, someone's touch me. We are all the fields of martyrs and heroines and friends. Give me your kiss forever, now. This is an excerpt from one of the longer stories in the book. As I mentioned, it's a hybrid book, and it moves between story and prose poem and poetry and images. And this is called Ends of the Rain. And it begins with an epigraph by Jane Kenyon. These things happen. The soul's bliss and suffering are bound together like the grasses. The last sweet exhalations of Timothy and Vetch go out with the song of the bird. The ravaged field grows wet with dew. Once upon a time, rains thrashed and pounded against windows, deafening as needles on corrugated tin, wild as branches tearing to ragged whips, and then it stopped. And there was black silence, no stars. And then there were stars. Silence, the word like a boulder, stayed. First it was a good silence, and then it was not. There would be no crying, no tickling, no giggling. The two small naked sons, fists like granite, were trying to be brave. No crying, a command, not a move, not a single twitch. They nodded. Everything inside and outside went numb. Outside, even the thrush had given up, shut her dry beak over a swallowed stone, would not sing of what she'd seen again, or what she would. The dim window, the small boys cornered, and a woman called godmother, her staccato shadow, the blind closing, the dark room with its promise. The thrush with a golden song could see and was silent. In a shut room, the boys lay back to back and squeezed their eyes into sealed boxes, bodies under a burlap throw. They loosened their small fists and touched each other's fingertips just. This was their only assurance. If either one of them were to make a single solitary move, thunder would come. It would be shaped like their father, the bad god, and he would come, and they might be killed. Those were the rules they were given each time, and they knew them. It had happened before. This time, they would be very, very good. It was the godmother who tied them, the fairy godmother their father had welcomed into their lives. Call her godmother, he demanded. And so they obeyed. The godmother, glassy-eyed, tall, her chilled skin wrapped in a dark green kimono, stepped nearly on tippy toes, delicate on spindle-thin shoes, ash trailing from a Marlboro between her bright orange lips, while she pulled cords around the two small bodies, closed the blind, and she stared at their eyes. I'm going to interrupt the flow of this book because this is a poem that received the Thomas Merton Poetry of the Sacred Award this year. And I just received my copy where it appears today in Parabolas magazine. So I'm pretty stoked, and I'd like to share it with you. It's called Ripening. Dawn has no eagles, no claws, no butterflies, a soul silence only monasteries and mountaintop holies had before, but that was before. And this is day at the end of beginning. There was only going to be a beginning once. You have started at the end to watch without eyes, to love without voice, to wait for your flesh to be written by your own unmade bed, a heartbeat born out of fear and soothed by silence. Nothing is gifted but walls and grace and white space. How could it be grace? The blind eye insists and the wall holds its counsel. Your marriages have not happened yet. Not the first, not the second, not the third, and the one in the dark, that person someone has informed you has died. You will learn to be sad. The lover has not said, this was not a marriage yet. And the rapist has not said, you can go now, yet. And the unrequited has always remained so. You are pure without knowing why. You are not clean, you are not dressed, but you are not spoiled. You do not understand arithmetic or viral sciences. You are a swan-necked girl with large hips and a starvation for God, a femme in silk. You are flame before it is stone. You are walking toward you, trembling with wish, dough with no forest to hide you. Your blood cells already know there are no promises. What if no one touches you, ever? There is no birthday, no double helix, no mother, no father, no messengers. But your word is his name, whispered in storm, is a handprint on water, is sprouted from a vernal branch along with its single leaf. You must learn to open. If this is meant to be a tree, what is a woman then? Gather her into your own sleep, your body, stone, ripening. And I'll end with an excerpt of one other story from the book. It's a rather racy story. And the title is New Old Wives' Tale, or maybe Whatever Became of Red Riding Hood, or the rest. Petronella was the old man's gardener, weeding silently in the sun. I liked her immediately. The flowers she tended were watching us. I began scribbling their names, loved the sound the names made in my mouth as I whispered them all together. Empereur du Maroc, Bishop Darling, Souvenir de Malmaison, quite the party, eh? I looked squarely at her. Was she a girl who could play with magic? Let's invite them then. How about that? She looked at me, animal to another animal. Her big head cocked to one side, frizzed mane drinking the heating sunshine now. How about just the men? I'll share, my dear. We can share. We shared an initial low register women's laugh. She was a country girl, and so was I. The old man won't be back until Sunday, I stated a fact we both knew. Then, do you happen to know how to summon spirits? Again, we laughed, a purred music from our bellies, as naturally as flowers opening in flagrante. I raised my left thumb and let it bend all the way backwards, a double-jointed twist, just as my grandmother used to show me hers. Grandmother, I mused for a quick second. Oh, Grandma, what did you do with all the wolves? I touched my own breasts, just lightly, through my sweater. Then I undid the buttons. Silence descended like a wide swathe, a black and pearled cloud. Distant bleats of the spring lambs, muted. Petronella pulled off her work smock and let it drop to the grass. Her two dogs wandered off into the shade, heads down on their paws. They slid into dreams. The gardener put her scythe away, opened her shorts, I put my notebook down, neither following nor leading. We began to circle the garden, heel, toe, reached out our hands as we passed, as though to caress the opened flowers. We want just the men, I whispered. Petronella nodded. A soft growl was what she uttered as Bishop Darling turned into an apparition, and then flesh, and the sun again bleached through the cloud cover. We both knew that's who he was, Bishop. He watched us both, ghost to ghost, animal to animal. This might have been enough. We were only two, but Comte de Chambord, Bonsilène, then all of them, and the two of us. We inspected like jewelers, horse traders. What big eyes you have, one murmured. All the better to see you with, my dear. We nodded knowingly, continued to inspect. Nails, hair, teeth, shoes, beards, thumbs. I always check the thumbs, I said softly. She looked at me, ready for any crone's secret. Indicates size, I taught her. Happy, giddy, silly, we picked. And then Le Baron de Gobard plucked the black iris with a bow, and he brought it to me, humming. A tryst. I climbed him like the nearest oak, barely heard the girl say, dear, dear Bishop Darling, while her dog snored. It was time to let the dark dog of dark moods rest, to take off one's clothes there, petal by petal, in spring sun, and naked to say, is a blackened purple iris with golden tatouage the most rare witch of morning in a secret garden behind its latched planks, or is it the wild iris? I left the garden latch open and I walked out naked this year. Voila.
Thank you so much, Margo. Beautiful. And I'm just in awe of how beautiful and poised you are at 2 o'clock in the morning. I would look like a train wreck and sound like one too. Your language is beautiful. Your poems are beautiful. Your book is beautiful. I will post the website again toward the end of the reading. Please, everybody, go to Sundress and get Neil Said the Night. Wow, really wonderful. Our second reader tonight is Anna Ross. I'm going to put her bio in the chat. I have to say I was thrilled when Anna contacted me about being on the series because I had completely fallen in love with her poem, All My Poems Used to End in Sky, which was in Kenyon Review. I'm completely obsessed with this poem about this visit to the aquarium and an octopus. Are you going to read it tonight? Can't see you. Is this on your list to read? Because if it's not, I'm gonna.
I'm unmuted. I unmuted myself.
Okay.
I can. Yeah, I'll read
No,
it.
okay, because I was gonna say if you weren't going to read it, I was gonna share a couple of lines, but suffice it to say,
and share them if you like. I have to pull the poem up on my phone. So
all right, but I'll just there's a piece of the poem where there's this kinship developed between the speaker and an octopus, and after the speaker learns that an octopus is sensate through its tentacles, it's one of the best descriptions of motherhood and having to let go of the younger stages of motherhood that I've ever read. An octopus can survive if one of her tentacles is taken, torn off by predator or accident, will even grow a new one in its place. But what happens to the touches and thoughts that go with it? Are they the fine first curls and milk teeth, long divided from the nursing nerve, kept insensate in a jar atop the dresser? And that was just the beginning of my love of the way that Anna's poems about motherhood, about womanhood, about connecting in in a world despite all of its harm. Or you have really spoken to me. Her new book is out now, came out last month, called Flutter Kick, which I highly recommend. And I'm going to stop talking and let you hear her wonderful poems. Anna.
Thank you. Wow, that's really wonderful to hear somebody else read my words back to me. Doesn't happen a whole lot. So thanks so much for reading those. Maybe I'll finish with that poem. I'm going to read mostly from my book, Flutter Kick, which maybe you can see. I'm sorry to be reading to you from the dark. I didn't set myself up well enough here, but I turned the
I'm going to
light.
unmute for a second because I'm seeing behind you on your screen that your students are seeing me and not you.
Oh, here, let me change my view. The screen. How do I make myself bigger? I think you might have to do that. Do you?
Do you have it on view speaker?
No. Let's see. Speaker. Yeah, I think I do have it on view speaker, and it doesn't seem to be doing it
Oh,
properly.
well, they're seeing you in person, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry. I hope other people are seeing me. Yeah. You guys, am I doing this wrong? Maybe you can help me. You seem like I'm doing it right. Up to this one? Go there? Brady's trying to help me. Go to what?
You didn't have to. Oh, yeah, right there. See that one? No, see that one?
This one?
No, the other one.
This one?
Oh.
This one?
That one. Maybe? Yeah. Should be that one.
No, it's not working.
Huh.
Okay. All right, we tried. Grid view? No. Oh no, now everything is got, okay, gallery. Sorry, I'll stop doing this right now. Okay, I'm gonna read from this book, Flutter Kick, and I think I'm gonna start with the first poem in the book, which is called House. This is a book about motherhood and daughterhood and how these things are very circular. As a mother, I found that I started to kind of relive my childhood and also understand a lot more about my mother's experience as an immigrant and as a mother here. So this poem is called House. I come from there with lavender growing small against the bricks. I come from there with a little white jug and a tea towel on the tray. I come from there with a worn stair rug and a wooden banister, leading up 2 floors past bedroom doors to a room at the very top, with a window looking down to a square of grass and a garden wall, where roses grow with tangled canes rooting between the cracks. I come from where I once was told someone attached a lock on her bedroom door and didn't say why or who she feared might open it through all the years she stayed in the house with lavender grown small against the bricks, and the roses rooting through the wall, and the tea towel on the tray, and the little white jug and worn stair rug she descended the day she went away. I come from there. Anxious talker. There's a place where words are born of silence, Ruiz said. Is it a place of anxious talkers, the sort who can't be in an elevator without remarking on the weather, not waiting for a response? How about those pats? Or a place for all of us who knew the answer in 2nd grade, but were afraid to raise our hands and now can't stop shouting, 7, it's 7, I know it too, at the teacher who praised the one girl who spoke, shaming the rest of us. She was the same girl who pulled your hair at recess if you wore braids and once punched you so hard in the thigh it left a bruise the size and shape of the dark purple pansies your mother planted each spring, small purple flags to claim the soil of a land she wasn't born into. Slowly, the bruise grew a yellow halo, and you were silent about that, too, until your mother found it in the bath. The words that came then were hers. Fear you understood only as anger. Why didn't you tell? And a visit to the teacher despite your pleas. It wouldn't work, you knew. That night, awake in the silent house, you fingered the bruise and heard, or thought you heard, a humming that might have been a word. I wanted to read that one, especially for my students, because it came out of an exercise. I make my students do exercises for me, and it came out of an exercise that a friend of mine gave me to start a poem with a line by Rumi, and I was really reluctant to do it. And so you could hear that I kind of argued with it, with the assignment a little bit at the beginning of the poem, but then I convinced myself by the end. So I'll move forward a little bit in the book. This book has a lot of self-portraits. There's sort of a spine throughout the book. And this one is from quite early in my daughter's life. It's called Self-Portrait with Alternate Ending. Keep 5:30, perfect June, almost evening. Keep forgetting dinner and walking out into the day, exhaling sweat, exhaust, and unseen sea like a lost gull. Keep the mile away bay we head for now, the baby in her stroller, queen at ship's prow, trying her new word, kitty kitty, on every living thing. Keep kitty kitty, keep the humped driveway that catches the stroller's wheels, the cracked sidewalk and ragged curb where we stop to let 3 boys run past, t-shirts flashing white. They don't turn to see us. Keep the boys as we start out again to cross our street, and kitty kitty, keep 3 more boys running, not so fast, but tracking the first 3. They stop for us who have interrupted their game. The taller one, his red and white striped shirt, his hand in his pocket. Keep the shirt, keep the hand, not the pocket. Keep the movement of his legs as he again begins to run. Keep the neighbor who calls to us as we cross over. Keep the mother who is sitting home with supper, or who is working in a hotel changing other people's sheets, or who is pulling into her driveway and calling to her neighbor. Have you seen him? Her boy, who stops now to take the gun out of his pocket, to fire its pop, pop, pop at the other boys retreating, their t-shirt flags waving, don't keep this. And the unsound as it arcs, as it tunnels through the air, or the whirring of the stroller's wheels as our legs unfurl, no wall or open door, but endless pavement and a bullet that is somewhere. Keep it somewhere, somewhere fallen in the grass, where later plainclothes cops will find it, reassure us that we weren't an intended target. Take out target, take out intention. Keep the baby in her stroller, singing softer now her kitty kitty as we jolt home, the sky a mask behind us. So I've maybe got fear on the brain right now because I've had a day where full of bomb threats. But I suppose there is a significant amount of fear in motherhood. And I'm going to read a poem where my daughter is kind of experimenting with that. Thanks for closing that door, Carson. This one is called All Hallows. The year that she was 3, my daughter was a fox for Halloween. Orange felt hood with ears, a tail stitched to her back and painted on whiskers, the only girl in the preschool parade not dressed as a princess. That was the same year something kept finding its way through the back wall of Granny's garden to dig up moles. Mornings we'd find the excavated holes, entrances we hadn't known existed. A fox, said Mr. Lovely, who came to cut the grass. We'd need to put down poison. But would that remove the fox or just the moles, we asked? And wouldn't it be better to find the holes, better to find the wall's gap and fill it? Excuse me. My daughter cried for the fox she never saw, begged us not to kill it, but still she didn't want to go alone into the garden. I think now she was trying on fear that Halloween, not the fox circling the henhouse kind, but the unseen thing that leaves a gash, exposing mud and plunder beneath the grass you thought you knew. In the picture we took, I hold her and her baby brother on my lap. He stares at her strange ears and painted face, amazed. She bares her teeth and locks the camera in her gaze. I'm going to move on to a later point. An experience of motherhood that I maybe should have expected but didn't was the experience of constant interruption, no matter what you're doing. You sort of get up, get dressed, get everybody fed, out the door to work, back, picked up, put where they need to go, and you're just trying to get through to bedtime. And all the while you're fielding questions from your kids, interruptions, the news is on, people are asking you for things at work, there's traffic, and you're just having to kind of take all of that in and try and respond as best you can while still moving forward. So this next poem gets at that, among some other things, by using found text as an interrupter within the poem. And the text it uses is from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's testimony during Brett Kavanaugh's Senate confirmation hearings. I think you'll probably recognize that it actually starts out with a question from Senator Amy Klobuchar. It's called Fugue. Can you tell us what you don't forget? The senator's voice repeats from the radio. It's rush hour, Boston, I-93, driving home from dance class with my daughter in the back seat. Her 12-year-old legs stretched long in pink body wrappers brand spandex as she wonders aloud what we're going to eat for dinner. Air brakes wheeze, then release beside us as a bus muscles past. And should I change the station as the senator's voice repeats, can you tell us what you don't forget? Above the traffic, rush hour, Boston, I-93, my daughter in the back seat, girl whose body I once unwrapped from mine. Is she listening now as the woman speaks? I was pushed onto the bed. His weight was heavy. I shake my head. Boston, rush hour, I-93, as if I could swerve by what edges up in me. He put his hand over my mouth. It was hard for me to breathe. Boston, rush hour, I-93, but I'm cruising a suburban street of dandelion lawns, legs the same age as my daughter, who jams her knees against my seat when I hit the brakes as one last car squeezes ahead of me. Can you tell us? Boston, rush hour, I-93 is fixed to a grid of red. What you don't forget? Taillights that bleed their after images. Can you, against gray sky, I'm tired, forget? Picturing my bed back home. What you don't? Quilt pulled tight against the sheets. Can you don't forget? Or is it that other bed? What year was it? Forget, don't. What day? Don't. Can you forget? How? Tell us, don't tell what. Did he, what? Can you forget? Don't tell us, touch me? I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit. I believed he was going to rape me. Boston, rush hour, I-93, a taillight flickers, horns begin to beep. How many times will I repeat this drive? Mom, when are we going to move? Her voice reaches toward me and I ease my weight up off the brake, considering the question. The miles, like bodies, fall between us and what I don't forget. In Boston, rush hour, I-93, driving home from dance class with my daughter in the back seat. Thank you. My students are snapping for me. Explaining tampons to my son. Mama, what are those? He asks, pointing to the small cardboard box that appears monthly on the toilet tank. So I tell him, inside, Uterus. A baby could grow, doesn't. Serious-eyed, he listens. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt, I lie. No baby, he asks. Yes, baby, I nod. No baby. We've been reading Greek myths, the gods swallowing their children or hiding them away in caves, Zeus ravishing women into cows and islands and ash. Did it hurt? Hera fuming, the other Olympians gorgeous on their thrones, trying to get one over on each other on earth. No blood, but ichor and ambrosia to smooth their battle nicks. I think of washing my sheets this morning, generations of smiling TV women calmly conquering grass stains, grease, mud, blood, the dried in and caked on. Back on the couch, he leans close, squeezing himself against me. Keep reading. We've reached Troy, a whole city and so many favored heroes demolished over a goddess snit fit and a greedy boy, until the Romans take over with their temples not so beautiful, but more luxurious. What's luxurious, he asks. Expensive, I tell him. Something everyone wants. But not beautiful, he asks. Maybe not. This is confusing. Also comfortable, I say. It's the end of the story now. All the gods renamed, then given up to constellations almost obscured by light pollution and bedtime schedules. Mama, have you finished shedding your blood? He asks after brushing his teeth. Mostly, I say. He nods, burrowing down into the luxury of his bed. I maybe should say that I wrote that poem during the beginning of the Trump administration, when luxury was much on people's minds and the implications of luxury. I'll read two more poems from this book, and then I'll finish with the octopus, my octopus poem. So my mom is not from here, and I grew up kind of in between cultures. She's from Dublin, Ireland, and we would spend a lot of time there during my childhood. So I'm going to read this poem for her. As a mother, I didn't realize, until I became a mother, I didn't realize how difficult it was for her to be here without her whole extended family as a safety net, kind of to help her, and how lonely that was. And I think that that's something that gets really lost when we talk about immigration to this country, and when you hear the rhetoric of people coming in to steal jobs and infiltrate. We forget how hard it is to do that, and how brave it is to do that, to move here, to move somewhere and leave your whole life behind, and what might make you do that. So this is called Self-Portrait as Invasive Species. In the Viking room of the National Archaeology Museum in Dublin, a glass case holds a child's leather boot. Blackened but intact, with two soft flaps to wrap the ankle of a toddler, it sits between two knife sheaths in its numbered spot. 10th century AD, likely the son or daughter of a wealthy trader, the poor wore wood. Discovered under High Street, Christ Church, Dublin. Nearby, a model of their mud and wattle settlement within palisades, sharp under the museum's LED lights. Pails, cups, spoons and mortars, toy sword and model boats, blacksmith tools, carved rings and pendants from an amber worker's house found beneath Fishamble Street. A spindle whorl and 3 bone pins, like fingers, my daughter cried, wanting to know if there were a real skeleton in the Viking coffin, boat-shaped by the wall. But I thought of gardens. What adopted shrub or flower with these intruders, traders who stayed long past trade, have counted on to signal spring? And then my mother, who one May day flew out from here, Leaving, she thought, the crush of family, 10 siblings, a father drunk with church. No way for her to see the hull-shaped shadow of her plane cutting irreversible across Atlantic waves toward husband, house, 3 daughters, foreign-born, and all our toys and tools, those plastic boats and rubber boots, so permanently new. And this one is called Studies Show. Afternoons, the hens scratch dust baths in the loose dirt near the dogwood tree. Shallow ovals they deflate into, heads slumped to one side, as if some large animal had moved through, puncturing them all. Then a flutter of wing showers fine brown powder, and the backyard fills with resurrection, a surprise every time. Humans, studies show, are terrible at calculating risk, unable to resist appearances, the hens felled by plague, not preening. Or do we need to believe the calm morning sea immune to storm? Last week, over 1,000 drowned, crossing from one country to another, a passage they thought safe. But safety is a rubber boat on a beach when all that's behind you drones and collapses. 1,000 gone from breakfast tables, beds, no letters back. But studies show large numbers are difficult for humans to conceive. We need the particular toddler collapsed on shore. It's May. I wear a shirt almost as pink as the dogwood's blossoms. The same foolish pink as the one I wore the day my waters broke and I became my daughter's failing boat. How many years since then, and still I count the hens each morning when I go out to feed them, necks stretched like the prows of miniature Phoenician ships as they plow toward me, all beak and risk, no calculation. When I was researching that poem, I went on a tangent about Phoenician ships, and apparently the Mediterranean seabed is just completely littered with them. And they're just they're so plentiful that archaeologists don't bother finding them or get it anymore because so anyway, I just say that to prove that all these travels have been going on for a long time. So this is a poem from my new project, which may be my next book. It's a collection of poems that all share the same title and first line. All my poems used to end in sky, but now they end in sleep, and they all end with the word sleep. This one is the first one that came out in the Kenyon Review a few months ago. All my poems used to end in sky, but now they end in sleep, where I might dream of the giant Pacific octopus I once saw at the Seattle Aquarium, rust red fluorescing to electric blue and back, legs hungering at all of us passing by. When I read that a female octopus lives alone her whole life until she mates, then sits guarding her clutch of eggs, not feeding until they hatch, and she, starved, dies, it seemed too easy. My kids next to me reaching their hands to meet her suckers safely on the other side of glass. I have not died for them, although I would, I tell myself, push them from the path of the careening truck or body block the bullet, but this has not been required. I am not evolutionarily programmed to dwindle to a ragged shape on seafloor, pale and spent outside my den, waiting for a shark to tidy my carcass away. No. But when I hear that an octopus carries 2/3 of her cognition in her arms that can telescope to twice their reach, their slime-covered suckers letting them taste and see whatever they find, I feel, yes, yes. As my kids spread from me now, fingers sticky with lunch into every crevice of museum, the tide pool touch tank where the hermit crabs might pinch and the sea urchins will draw blood, The underwater dome circled by venomous dogfish, the deep open air pool where harbor seals hunt and play. An octopus can survive if one of her arms is taken, torn off by predator or accident, will even grow a new one in its place. But what happens to the touches and thoughts that go with it? Are they the fine first curls and milk teeth long divided from the nursing nerve, kept insensate in a jar atop the dresser? I watch her, wondering if I'm the thing she wants to know and at the same time flee, as she tenses her muscles into horns, then subsides, chromatophores within her skin expanding and contracting to match the color first of a pile of pebbles, next my shirt, and finally a neighboring anemone. But let me not anthropomorphize. I am here, human in the aquarium, my children spreading themselves as wide as they can from me, then retracting back for a snack or to report what they've seen, all of us changing shape beneath the watery lights, blurring us into an almost liquid, almost animal sleep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear you read that poem. And I love that the project is confined like that with the titles and the first lines and the last word. I like to read things like that where poets have given themselves constraints. We're running a little bit behind, so I'm going to move quickly to our last reader, Ruiz. I don't have a lot of words to say about V's work. Their work is spell and wound and velvet and hammer and lore and legacy, and love and loss and awaking to the self. And if you don't believe me, you can get her book and read the brilliant blurb she has from some, tiny little poets like Ilya Kaminsky and Ada Limon, and Paige Lewis. V's work is very, very powerful, and I can't wait for you to hear them read. And so I'm going to stop talking and let them do so.
Hey everyone. Okay, so I wanted to say thank you for inviting me. I actually haven't had a reading in a couple of years, so I'm a little bit nervous. I have Bob's Burgers on in the background so my pets don't fight. So if that gets too loud, just tell me. I'm just going to move through the poems and let them kind of bleed into each other. But the first one, I do want to say that you'll hear me say a word and then strike out and then say another word. And so I'm utilizing the strikeout emphasis on that. Okay. So I will be reading some poems from the manuscript I'm currently working on that I put away for a few years. Some from In Stories with Thunder, my newest book, and then also maybe a very, very new poem because I believe in vulnerability. This one is called In Which I Make Metaphors Out of Traumas. Palomas whisper of Bible verses written on the hairs of their feet. Why do I only seek Dios in the dark? I'm shuddering these hands into prayer. Beg, strike out, pray he has the strength to pry apart my eyelids. There's a memory, strike out, black hole stuck in my iris. I speak tongues, but I'm always too busy climbing into myself, strike out mirrors, to find the song hidden in the mouths of knees. I tried to silence these traumas, strike out these visions, tried to project a silent film, strike out. A woman, strike out, a paloma is meant to be silent. Their mouths, strike out, their wings never making a flutter. While his hands, no, strike out, his feathers are stuck in my throat. Did he leave bruises on my, strike out her skin to watch blood bloom? Men are always forcing things to bloom. Why is a man always buried by snow? Always seeking algo caliente, from bodies, strike out bottles and cigarillos. How do I make light bulbs out of bruises, strike out coal? I spent hours walking the labyrinth of a snail's shell. I'm always making journeys out of nothing. I will tell you this, all men, strike out, all birds, break into the world by cracking an eggshell with the blades of their being, strike out beak. Maybe there is something to this cracking. I'm trying to find the light, strike out the parable. I'm always making something out of nothing. And this one is called We Mirror Consumption. I'm talking to glass, downing vino to find John 3:16 at the bottom of this spent paper cup. Think maybe the numbers will flake off, waterfall down my throat until I am a legacy of verses. John says God gave a son, his only hijo. John says you sit here trying to marry shards of glass, make lightning bolted polygamy, but the red is not a glue, and all this brokenness only cuts, doesn't resurrect. I tell John to go fuck himself. Say Jesus Cristo never asked me to fuck this vida or make love to it, but I petite mort to the song of sangre. The musicality found in this ay Dios mío, plopping goblets of burgundy. I make my hands into an oracle, cut myself on black onyx. These pupils take over irises. I watch the spilling over of Dios, watch Dios splitting his arms for us, letting his cells wild like rivers from his black hole pupils. Okay, this one is called Hair of the Dog, and this is from my book In Stories We Thunder, which has a lot of retellings and is kind of like my way of sharing the myths of the women and femmes in my family. So, Hair of the Dog. When I dream of my grandfather, I see myself cutting off bits of his hair as he lays in an antibiotic room surrounded by the beep beep of him. I take the clippings and grind them in my molcajete, mix in pocketed soil dug from the graves of plum-bruised women, use the pestle to pulverize the concoction with spit. He cries, clutching his hollow chest. I take his tarred pomegranate heart and pound it in the round of the bowl. As he begs for forgiveness, I smile, take the molcajete to my mouth and lick the remedio. My full mouth cannot forgive. Instead, I take what bit my family and cure our blood of his rabidness. So this next poem is called A Flutter Caged by Costillas. And this was actually, I'm really proud of this poem. Paige Lewis selected this poem as second place winner in a poetry contest a few years ago. So, A Flutter Caged by Costillas. I'm trying to glide away from this body by looking for worlds hidden in the grains of wood bordering my sleep. But the rings reach out, wrap roots around my throat, and escape must be earned. Each pulse is a step towards the dirt shell we won't outgrow. Tortugas spend years walking the earth, carrying sleep and shelter on their backs, the slowest of heartbeats, a corazón willing to be tamed. I am too wild for this body. Even my skin refuses to carry my legacy. Across my forehead appear valleys, and I think home lives in these lines, or that I can find a way home if I trek across the caminos of my jaws. Through the caverns of my eyes, I'm obsessed with glass and espejos, and I think rivers give the most honest reflections with all the breaking, all the bending and rushing. I don't believe in stillness. I believe in transitions, in the point between then and there. Or maybe I'm just trying to be poetic because I'm scared home might be found in the pause between breaths. Do you know 70% of illness stems from stress and trauma created in childhood? I'm always wondering what was fate, what was shitty timing, and my Dios, some days I don't want to be hopeful. Some days I want to run, peel away this flesh, walk out in only huesos, the only part that will outlive the beats in my chest. I also have this chapbook called What the Water Gave Me. And it's a collection of ekphrastic poems where I use a lot of Frida Kahlo's poems to kind of explore disability and queerness. So this one is called Se equivocó la paloma. The sparrows descend on the skies like acorns, tossed carelessly by a god who can spare meals. At the setting of day, I grab 2 from the sky, steal an ala from each before swallowing their talons whole. I am caged by a body that can only become more hollow with time. I'm not envious of the birds. I only wonder why Tiempo decided to spare those who could escape when I come from a lineage of caught and clipped. And this one is called, or it's named after the 2 Fridas. Sever the corazón and bleed over all that pristine white, the wedding dress, the lace, the filigree of all we hoped this could eventually be. These empty palms hold each other. I strip myself of our bind and the rose vein wound around the ring finger. I'd much rather your photo be tucked away into a shadow box I can so easily push away and forget. Okay. And this one is titled We Mirror Tempted. I've been spending a lot of this year trying to focus on unmasking, exploring my autism diagnosis, ADHD, and these poems have been, these We Mirror poems specifically, I think, have helped me utilize like mythical women, femmes, mythical beings in general, as like this source of like exploring all the ways that we maybe mirror people around us, or the ways that we mask and the things that we don't always want to face about each other. So this one is called We Mirror Tempted. Plucked from Adam's rib. Boy, don't you realize I am what's keeping you breathing? Call me cage. I say safety. I say I don't know my own bone strength. Broken costilla. Fashion me into an ivory scythe. Cut myself from Adam's roots. I bloody the body I'm descended from, descendant of, so willing to leave in search of sin and milagro. They say Eve was more godlike than Adam, creadora of all the sharp we bury, of all the stones we have worn into smooth. Criatura de noche y luz, mirrored when full, not temptress. I still think she's santa with a strong dose of puta. See, my girl gave up heaven, went searching for something more like a magnifying glass, even if it meant evil could touch her. Where is the hidden pomegranate in this life? I bend before the altar of Eve, give blessings con mi lengua. At the start of this world, say I'm willing to taste the underworld, even if it means these gardens will fall, fall, fall. I transform into captured and deceived, swallow 7 seeds stolen from the ground, don't know each will bring me back through this hell. Cast from gardens, reincarnated through new myths, crown me queen of oscuridad or demote me in front of flowers. Okay, cool. Hopefully I'm not reading too fast. I get like really breathy and I just roll through them. Okay, this one is called In a Fever, I Write to You. In a fever, I write to you and say all birds remind me of you. And the time we went to an exotic bird store, we each held a macaw and you leaned in and whispered to the white one with a crown on my shoulder. And its pupils widened and shut into a needle just before it leaned in to snatch up my turquoise necklace. You told me as you pried out the stone from its beak that you and I once lived as birds on an island so far from here. I still feel the berries in my belly roll around with early morning worms. And my hands are still talons trying to pick up any weak thing to take it to the skies so it can feel all that blue before it's consumed. My letters to you always start with I miss you. Before I delete the words and change it to I will never forgive you. And I think I'm still trying to understand how I can exist in both of these spaces, how a bird can be winged but flightless. Share a new poem now, and then I'll end with a couple more from the new manuscript, and then maybe one from the book. We'll see. So I don't have a name for this one, but yeah, I'm just gonna read through it. Okay. I have survived countless eruptions, rubies and gold glimmer dust rising from my core, settling into specks wedged between each lung. I don't know how to excavate this ash. This Gatlipoca warns that smoke clouds the truth into something I'm afraid to admit. I tell him that I have handled more before, that I've taken boulders of onyx and swallowed them. I am not afraid of a challenge. The reflection in his iris tells me this is a lie. The flakes of dust and tendrils of obsidian have woven themselves between each rib, made of my heart embroidery art. I am speckled with black diamonds inside, each formed from the shiver of the earth's crust. I have tried to ignore the quakes from my belly, the way the ground falls out around me. I am one misstep away from tumbling into sacrifice, a ceremony I'm all too familiar with. I feel like whenever I read through some of my favorite poems, I'm like, okay, you can tell that I'm a witch because all I talk about is like endless black and bones and birds. Like, I like bones, but I'm also, I'm an astrologer, and I'm very Capricorn heavy and very Saturnian. And so I just like bones. I don't know. There's something about them. The fact that they can last so long, I think is legit. Okay, so yeah, I will read 3 more. They're all pretty short. This one is called Statistics. My mind is a 6-lane highway divided by a crumbling median mess. Cracked glitz reflectors, cycas palms split by tires, and way too many dented guardrails. What I'm really saying is that I am a history of accidents. I am a history of imperfect timing resulting in 1 in 5,000 car deaths happening only here. A sugar skull cabeza marked by crosses and flowers and names of all the people who were in the wrong intersections of me. See, my body is a freak occurrence of too many hot winds colliding at once, and I think the space between my legs must hold the Bermuda Triangle because I've only ever seen the people who love between them lose their breath, fall into an endless blue before they disappear and are nothing but the memory I lay to rest in a black box. Right. And this one, actually, I'm going to read it from the book. I just realized I didn't copy it. So this one is called When My First Grader Arrived. I plucked it away only to watch 2 birth from where the first bloomed. The fibra plumed icy cool. I watched silver vines sprout over and over as a single hair became feather. Each time I plucked, new plumage emerged, thickening into a crown of hollow silk bones. My head becoming bird, my skin giving way to layers and ruffles. I am a woman fading tonight, with a boca crowning into a beak, my screams sounding more like squawks. I'm biting my own lengua to stop all this parroting. Even vocal birds can be forced to say, I love you. I have a frail tongue, a small mouth, but I will the commands into my own hechizos. Tell myself, te amo, te amo, te amo, in all of this fading. Say, I will stain my insides regardless of this molting. Say, when I turn all gris, when I become all feathers, I will be a winged thing returning to homelands. Husky gray hairs. I actually like My family grade young, but I grade later. Like I didn't get my first one until I was in grad school. And then more came. And I was like, okay, yeah, grad school. That makes sense. Okay, I will end with this poem called Umbilical. It would be cool if they turned into birds. Yeah, so this one is for my child who is now a teenager, and that's weird. Okay, umbilical. Sangre only rests because of oxygen, and maybe, hija, I'm not full of all the magia I'd like you to believe. Maybe it's all science, and maybe everything I pass on can be explained by a research paper or years of experiment. I believe truth exists in the paradox, like how sueños are more like fog, suspended time where even the water is willing to be still. It's funny how we only ever see one side of La Luna. All this time we look up and we think we know her. Maybe you and I are like that. Maybe we're made to orbit the galaxy all the way to Pluto's sunken corazon, only ever showing one side. But imagine all our shadow seas, all that endless night. When you wake, I still have to shake comets from your lashes, and some nights I hear the rings of Saturn in your breath. Sometimes you leave the place you were born for, and maybe you come back new, feeling unseen. Every scratched knee is a reminder you were willing to risk it all to fly for a moment. Every broken heart recorded in photos turned ash is a reminder you are more than the dust you leave behind. I'm trying to understand how to be human and trying to show you what it means. Every time I read that poem, it is a challenge not to cry, which is like, I don't know, it's funny. But I made it through that time, so I'm proud of myself, though my voice cracked at the end. That is all. Thank you very much for letting me share.
Thank you so much for reading. I'm so happy that we also got to hear some new work from you. I always love to hear new work on the show. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us this evening. I know we had kind of like a little small but mighty audience with Anna's class, so thank you, Anna's class, for being with us as well. It's been a real a wonderful year for me. Like I started this as an experiment, and I've been so blessed to hear so many wonderful writers this year on the show, and I'm already almost booked all the way for next year, so I'm hoping to continue this series. We're going to stay as much as possible on the third Thursday of the month. So again, you can easily find us on social media. We do have a YouTube channel, so I'm just going to put all of that info into the chat one more time. So if you'd like to find us or look up some of the other readings you might have missed, you can do that there. Thank you so much to Margo and to Anna and to V. Beautiful work, 3 very different styles and all stunning poems. Please, please, please go to their websites or to their publishers and buy their books. We ran a little over tonight, but that's okay because the poems were so great. But I do want to respect everybody's time, and so I'm going to stop the recording and say goodnight. And if you want to throw a last comment into the chat or, wave at somebody, feel free to do so. And